Emmanuel. Please be clear. That means God with us. And Jesus said, if you want to go to heaven, you got to become like a child. Ouch. And a little child will lead them. So this is a story about a child who has things figured out pretty well. And maybe we adults ought to listen. Here we go. My life with Anna began on such a night. I was 16 at the time, prowling the streets and alleys with my usual supply of hot dogs. The street lights with the folly halos showing dark, formless shapes, moving out from the darkness of the fog and disappearing again. Down the street a little way, a baker's shop window softened and warmed the raw night with its gas lamps. Sitting on the grating under the window was a little girl. In those days, children wandering the streets at night were no uncommon sight. I'd seen such things before, but on this occasion, it was different. How or why it was different has long since been forgotten, except that I'm sure it was different. I sat down beside her on the grating, my back against the shop front. We stayed there about 3 hours. Looking back over 30 years, I can now cope with those 3 hours, but at the time, I was on the verge of being destroyed. That November night was pure hell. My guts tied themselves into all manners of complicated knots. Perhaps even then, something of her angelic nature caught hold of me. I'm quite prepared to believe that I had been bewitched from the beginning. I sat down with, "Shove up a bit, Twitch." She shoved a bit, but made no comment. "Have a hot dog?" I said. She shook her head and answered, "It's yourn." "I got plenty. Besides, I'm full up," I said. She made no sign, so I put the bag on the grating between us. The light from the shop window wasn't very strong, and the kid was sitting in the shadows, so I couldn't see what she looked like, except she was very dirty. I could see that she clutched under one arm a rag doll, and on her lap, a battered old paint box. We sat there for 30 minutes or so in complete silence. During that time, I thought there had been a movement of her hand towards the hot dog bag, but I didn't want to look or comment in case I put her off. Even now, I can feel the immense pleasure I had when I heard the sound of that hot dog skin popping underneath the bite of her teeth. A minute or two later, she took a second and then a third. I reached into my pocket and brought out a packet of Woodbines. "Do you mind if I smoke while you're eating, Titch?" I asked. "What?" She sounded a little alarmed. "Can I have a fag while you're eating?" She rolled over, got to her knees, and looked me in the face. "Why?" she said. My mom's a stickler for politeness. Besides, you don't blow smoke in a lady's face when she's eating," I said. She stared at half a sausage for a moment or two. Looking at me fully, she said, "Why? Do you like me?" I nodded. "You have a fag then." And she smiled at me and popped the rest of the sausage into her mouth. I took out a Woodbine and lit it up and offered her the match to blow out. She blew, and I was sprayed with bits of sausage. This little accident produced such a reaction in her that I felt that I had been stabbed in the guts. I had seen a dog cringe before, but never a child. The look she gave me filled with horror. She expected a thrashing. She clenched her teeth as she waited for me to strike her. What my face registered, I don't know, perhaps anger and violence or shock and confusion. Whatever it was, it produced from her the most piteous whimper. I can't describe this sound after all these years. No words are fitting. The feeling I can still taste, can still experience. My heart faltered at the sound, and something came undone inside me. My clenched fist hit the pavement beside me, a useless gesture in response to Anna's fears. Did I think of that image then? That image which I now think of? The only one that fits the occasion? That perfection of violence? That ultimate horror and bewilderment of Christ crucified? That terrible sound that the child made was a sound that I never wish to hear again. It attacked my emotional being and blew a fuse. After a moment or two, I laughed. I suppose that the human mind can only stand so much grief and anguish. After that, the fuses blow. It did with me. My fuses blew in a big way. The next few minutes, I know very little about, except that I laughed and laughed. And then I realized that the kid was laughing too. No shrunken bundle of fear. She was laughing, kneeling on the pavement and leaning forward with her face close to mine and laughing and laughing. So very many times in the next 3 years, I heard her laughter. No silver bells or sweet rippling sound was her laughter, but like a 5-year-old's bellow of delight, a cross between a puppy's yelp and a motorbike and a bicycle pump. I put my hands on her shoulders and held her off at arm's length, and then came back that look that is entirely Anna's, mouth wide open, eyes popping out of her head like a whippet straining at the leash. Every fiber of that little body was vibrating and making a delicious sound. Legs and arms, toes and fingers, the whole of that little body shook and trembled like Mother Earth, giving birth to a volcano. And what a volcano was released in that child. Outside that baker's shop in Dockland on a foggy November night, I had the unusual experience of seeing a child born. After the laughter had quieted off a bit, but while her little body was still thrumming like a violin string, she tried to say something, but it wouldn't come out properly. She managed a you. After some little time and a great deal of effort, she managed, you love me, don't you? Now, even if it had not been true, I could not have said no to save my life. True or false, right or wrong, there was only one answer. I said, yes. She gave a little giggle and pointing a finger at me said, you love me, and then broke into some primitive gyration around the lamppost chanting, you love me, you love me, you love me. 5 minutes of this and she came back, sat down on the grating. It's nice and warm for your bum, ain't it, she said. I agreed it was nice for your bum. A moment later, I ain't our firsty. So we upped and went down to the pub just down the road. I bought a large bottle of Guinness. She wanted one of them ginger pops with the marble in the neck. So she had 2 ginger pops and some more Save-Loys from all night coffee stall. Let's go back and get our bums warm again, she grinned at me. Back we went, sat on the grating, a big un and a little un. I don't suppose that we drank more than half of the drinks, for it seemed that the idea of a fizzy drink was to shake it vigorously and then let it shoot up into the air. After a few showers of ginger pop and a determined effort to do the nose trick, she said, now do yourn. I'm sure even then that this was not a request, but an order. I shook hard and long and then let fly with the stopper, and we were both covered with frothy Guinness. The next hour was filled with giggles and hot dogs, ginger pops, and chocolate raisins. The occasional passerby was yelled at, "Oi, mister, he loves me, he do." Running up the steps of a nearby building, she shouted, "Look at me, I'm bigger than you." About 10:30 that evening, while she was sitting between my knees having an earnest conversation with Maggie, her rag doll, I said, "Come on, Titch, it's about time you were in bed. Where do you live?" In a flat, matter-of-fact voice, she exclaimed, "I don't live nowhere. I've runned away." What about your mom and dad?" I asked. She might have said the grass is green and the sky is blue. What she did say was just as factual and effortless. "Oh, she's a cow and he's a sod. And I ain't going to no bleeding cop shop. I'm going to live with you." This was no request, but an order. What could you do? I merely accepted the fact. Right, I agree. You come home with me and then we will have to see. At that point, my education began in earnest. I've got myself a large doll, not an imitation doll, a real live one, and from what I could make out, a bomb with legs on. Going home that night was like coming home from Hampstead Heath, slightly tilted, a little dizzy from the merry-go-round I'd been on, and not a little bewildered that the beautiful doll I'd won on the shooting range had come to life and was walking beside me. "What's your name, Titch?" I asked her. "Anna, what's yours?" "Finn," I said. "Where do you come from?" I didn't get an answer to this question. and that was the first and last time she didn't answer a question. I gathered later the reason for this. It was because she was afraid that I might have taken her back. When did you run away? Oh, 3 days ago, I think. We took the short way home by climbing over the cut bridge and crossing over the railway yards. This was always my way in because we lived next to the railway and it was convenient, to say nothing of the fact that it meant I didn't have to get Mum out of bed to open the front door. We got into the scullery by the back door and then into the kitchen. I lit the gas. For the first time, I saw Anna. God only knows what I expected to see, certainly not what I did see. It wasn't that she was dirty or that her frock was about 10 sizes too big. It was a mixture of ginger pop, Guinness, and her paint tin. She looked like a little savage, smears of various colored paints all over her face and arms, the front of her frock a complete riot of color. She looked so funny and so tiny, and her response to my bellow of laughter so reduced her to cowering self again that I hurriedly picked her up to the level of the mirror over the mantelpiece and made her look. Her delicious little giggle was like closing the door on November and stepping out into June. I can't say that I looked much different that night. I, too, was covered in paint. A rot pear, Mom said as she appeared. In the middle of the giggles, there was a thump, thump, thump in the wall. That was Mom's signal. That you? Your supper's in the oven, and don't forget to turn the gas off. Instead of the usual, okay, Mom, won't be long this night, I opened the door and yelled down the passage, Mom, come and see what I got. One thing about Mom, she was never fussed about anything. She took everything in her stride. Bossy the cat, I brought home one night. Patch the dog, 18-year-old Carol, who stayed with us for 2 years, and Danny from Canada, who stayed about 3 years. Some people collect stamps or beer mats. Mom collected waifs and strays, cats, dogs, frogs, people, and she believed a whole host of little people. Had she been confronted that night with a lion, she'd have made the same comment. The poor thing. One look when she came through the door was enough. The poor thing, she cried. What have they done to you? And then as an afterthought to me, you look a right mess. Wash your face. With that, Mom flopped onto her knees and put her arms around Anna. Being embraced by Mom was like tangling with a gorilla. Mom had arms like other people have legs. Mom had a unique anatomical structure which still puzzles me, for she had a 14-stone heart and a 12-stone body. Mom was a real lady, and whenever she may be now, she'll still be a lady. A few minutes of oohs and ahs, then things began to get organized. Mom heaved herself upright, and with a passing shot to me, get those wet clothes off that child. Flung open the kitchen door, yelling, Stan, Carol, come here, quick. Stan's my younger brother by 2 years. Carol was one of the waifs or strays that came and went. The kitchen and the scullery suddenly erupted. A bath appeared, kettles of water on gas rings, towels, soap. The kitchen range was filled with coal. And there was me trying to undo sundry hooks and eyes on Anna's clothing. And suddenly, there she was, sitting cross-legged on the table, as raw as the day she was born. Stan said, bastard. Carol said, Christ. Mom looked a bit grim. For a moment, that little kitchen blazed with hatred for someone. That poor little body was bruised and sore. The 4 older people in the kitchen were ready to bash someone. For a time, we were lost in our own anger. But Anna sat and grinned a huge face-splitting grin. Like some beautiful sprite, she sat there, and I believe for the first time in her life, she was entirely and completely happy. Jumping forward, when the bed had been made and all the night preparations attended to, I went back into the kitchen again. There was the little imp enthroned in a cane chair, swaddled in blankets, drinking a cup of hot cocoa. Bossy was sitting in her lap, giving a fair imitation of Houdini, trying to wiggle out of a straitjacket, and Patch at her feet, beating time with his tail on the floor. The hiss of the gas light, the bright firelight, the little pools of water on the floor all turned that little kitchen into a Christmas scene. The Welsh dresser, the shiny pots, and the black leaded kitchen range with its brass fire irons and guards seemed to sparkle. In the midst of it all sat the little princess, clean and shining. This little thing had the most splendid, the most beautiful copper-colored hair imaginable and a face to match. No painted cherub on some church ceiling was this child, but a smiling, giggling, squirming, real-life child, her face alight with some inner radiance, her eyes like 2 blue searchlights. Earlier in the evening, I had said yes to her question, you love me, don't you? because I was unable to say no. Now I was glad that I had been unable to say no, for the answer was yes, yes, yes. How can anyone fail to love this little thing? Mom gave a big bit of a grunt, and her usual, well, we better be off to bed or we won't be worth anything tomorrow. And so I picked up Anna and took her along to her bed. The bedclothes were already pulled back, and I put her down and made it as if to tuck her in, but this was all wrong. Ain't you going to say your prayers, she asked. Well, yes, I replied, when I get to bed. I want to say mine now with you, she said. So we both got down on our knees, and she talked while I listened. I've been to church many times and heard many prayers, but none like this. I can't remember much about her prayer except that it started off with, Dear Mr. God. This is Anna talking. And she went on in such a familiar way of talking to Mr. God that I had the creepy feeling that if I dared look behind me, he would be standing right there. I remember her saying, Thank you for letting Finn love me. And I remember being kissed goodnight, but how I got to bed, I don't know. I lay in bed in some confusion, wondering what had hit me. The trains rattled on their way, the fog swirled around the street lamp. It may have been an hour that I lay in there, possibly two, when I heard the clack-clack of the curtain rings, and there she was standing at the end of my bed, quite visible in the lamplight. For a minute or two, I lay there thinking she was just wondering to reassure herself. When she moved around to the head of my bed, I said, Hi, Titch. Can I get in? She said in a whisper. She didn't wait for my if you want to, but slid in beside me, buried her head in my neck, and cried silently. Her tears warm and wet on my chest. There was nothing to say, nothing to do, but to put my arm around her. I didn't think I would sleep, but I did. I woke to the sound of stifled giggles. Anna still beside me, giggling like a fiend, and Carol, already dressed, standing there giggling, with a morning cup of tea in her hand. All this in less than 12 hours. Mom and Anna shared many likes and dislikes. Perhaps the simplest and the most beautiful sharing was their attitude towards Mr. God. Most people I knew used God as an excuse for their failure. He should have done this, or why has God done this to me? But with Mom and Anna, difficulties and adversities were merely occasions for doing something. Ugliness was a chance to make beautiful. Sadness was a chance to make glad. Mr. God was always available to them. A stranger would have been excused for believing that Mr. God lived with us, but then Mom and Anna believed he did. Very rarely did any conversation exclude Mr. God in some way or other. After the evening meal was finished and all the bits and pieces put away, Anna and I would settle down some activity, generally of her choosing. Fairy stories were dismissed as mere pretend stories. Living was real, and living was interesting and by and large fun. Reading the Bible wasn't a great success. She tended to regard it as a primer, strictly for the infants. The message of the Bible was simple, and any half-wit could grasp it in 30 minutes flat. Religion was for doing things, not for reading about doing things. Once you got the message, there wasn't much point in going over and over the same old ground. Our local parson was quite taken aback when he asked her about God. The conversation went as follows. Do you believe in God? Yes. Do you know what God is? Yes. What is God then? He's God. Do you go to church? No. Why not? Because I know it all. What do you know? I know to love Mr. God and to love people and cats and dogs and spiders and flowers and trees. And the catalog went on with all of me. Carol grinned at me. Stan made a face, and I hurriedly put a cigarette in my mouth and indulged in a bout of coughing. There's nothing much you can do in the face of that kind of accusation, but that's what it amounted to, out of the mouth of babes. Anna had bypassed all the non-essentials and distilled centuries of learning into one sentence. And God said, love me, love them, love it, and don't forget to love yourself. The whole business of adults going to church filled Anna with suspicion. The idea of collective worship went against her sense of private conversations with Mr. God. As you see, I'm jumping around. I haven't told you about Anna's way of solving problems, have I? If Anna was confronted with a situation that didn't come out easily, there was only one thing to do. Take your clothes off. So there we were in bed, the street lamp lighting up the room, her head cupped in her hands and both elbows firmly planted on my chest. I waited. She chose to remain like that for about 10 minutes, getting her arguments into its proper order, and then she launched forth. Mr. God made everything, didn't he? There was no point in saying that I didn't really know. I said, yes. Even the dirt and the stars and the animals and the people and the trees and everything and the pollywogs. The pollywogs were those little creatures that we had seen under the microscope. I said, yes, he made everything. She nodded her agreement. Does Mr. God love us truly? Sure thing, I said. Mr. God loves everything. Oh, she said. Well then, why does he let things get hurt and dead? Her voice sounded as if she had felt betrayed a sacred trust. But the question had been thought, and it had to be spoken. I don't know, I replied. There's a great many things about Mr. God that we don't know about. Well then, she continued, if we don't know many things about Mr. God, how do we know he loves us? I could see this was going to be one of those times, but thank goodness she didn't expect an answer to her question, for she hurried on. Them pollywogs. I could love them till I bust, but they wouldn't know, would they? I'm a million times bigger than they are, and Mr. God is a million times bigger than me. So how do I know what Mr. God does? She was silent for a little while. Later, I thought that at this moment she was taking her last look at babyhood. Then she went on. Finn, Mr. God doesn't love us. She hesitated. He doesn't really, you know. Only people can love. I love Bossy, but Bossy don't love me. I love the pollywogs, but they don't love me. I love you, Finn, and you love me, don't you? I tightened my arm around her. You love me because you are a people. I love Mr. God truly, but he don't love me. It sounded to me like a death knell. Blast it. I thought, why does this have to happen to people? Now she's lost everything. But I was wrong. She had got both feet planted firmly on the next stepping stone. No, she went on. No, he don't love me, not like you do. It's different. It's millions of times bigger. I must have made some movement or noise, for she levered herself upright and sat on her haunches and giggled. Then she launched herself at me and undid my little pang of hurt, cut out the useless spark of jealousy with the delicate sureness of a surgeon. Finn, you can love better than any people that ever was, and so can I, can't I? But Mr. God is different. You see, Finn, people can only love outside and can only kiss outside, but Mr. God can love you right inside, and Mr. God can kiss you right inside. So it's different. Mr. God ain't like us. We're a little bit like Mr. God, but not much yet. It seemed to me to reduce itself to the fact that we were like God because of some similarities, but God was not like us because of our differences. Her inner fires had refined her ideas like some alchemist. She had turned lead into gold. Gone were all the human definitions of God like goodness, mercy, love, justice, for these were merely props to describe the indescribable. You see, Finn, Mr. God is different from us because he can finish things and we can't. I can't finish loving you because I shall be dead millions of years before I can finish. But Mr. God finished loving you, so it's not the same kind of love, is it? Even Mr. Jethro's, that's her name for Jesus. Love is not the same as Mr. God's because he only came here to make us remember. The first salvo was enough for me. It all needed a bit of thinking about, but I wasn't going to be spared the rest of our artillery. Finn, why do people have fights and wars and things? I explained to the best of my ability. Finn, what is the word for when you see it in a different way? After a minute or two, scrabbling about, the precise phrase she wanted was dredged out of me. The phrase point of view. Finn, that's the difference. You see, everybody's got a point of view, but Mr. God hasn't. Mr. God has only points to view. At this moment, my one desire was to get up and go for a long, long walk. What was this child up to? What had she done? In the first place, God couldn't finish things off. I couldn't. I'll accept that, but what did it mean? It seemed to me that she had taken the whole idea of God outside the limitation of time and placed him firmly in the realm of eternity. What was this difference between a point of view and points to view? This stumped me. but a little further questioning cleared up the mystery. Points to view was a clumsy term. She meant viewing points. The second salvo had been fired. Humanity in general had an infinite number of points of view, whereas Mr. God had an infinite number of viewing points. When I put it to her this way and asked her what that was that she meant, she nodded her agreement and then waited to see if I enjoyed the taste. Let me see now. Humanity has an infinite number of points of view. God has an infinite number of viewing points. That means that God is everywhere. I jumped. Anna burst into peals of laughter. You see, she said, you see? I did too. There's another way that Mr. God is different. We obviously hadn't finished yet. Mr. God can know things and people from the inside too. We only know them from the outside, don't we? So you see, Finn, people can't talk about Mr. God from the outside. You can only talk about Mr. God from the inside of him. After another 15 minutes or so were spent in polishing up these arguments, and then with an "Isn't it lovely?" she kissed me and tucked herself under my arm, ready for sleep. And a child will lead them. Sometimes we make things too complicated. Let's pray. Father, thank you for kids, especially at Christmas, who show us how to love, who show us what you're like. May we become children so that we can know what you're really like.